Hello, Torah community. It's Natan here to share with you some words of Torah for this week's Parsha, Yitro. Yitro joins the Jewish people at the beginning of this Parsha. He joins the Jewish people with Tzipporah, Moshe's wife, and Moshe and Tzipporah's children, Gershom and Eliezer. They were away for a while when Yetziat Mitzrayim was happening. It was very dangerous, and they joined the Jewish people. When they come, Yitro says, I am so impressed with everything that Hashem has done, and I acknowledge Hashem and his greatness. Some even say that he converted. At that moment, he decided he wanted to be a part of the nation of Israel, and it stuck with him. When did this story take place? Funny question, because it has a spot in the Torah and the sequence, but there are multiple stories in the Torah which our rabbis and our commentaries debate when they exactly happened. Some say this story of Yitro joining the Jewish people actually happened not before our Sinai, as we see it in our Parsha, but actually afterwards. And what Yitro was impressed with wasn't just Yitziat Mitzrayim, splitting of the sea, what happened to Paro's army, but also Har Sinai itself. And that's what inspired him to become a part of the Jewish people. If you say that it really did take place after Har Sinai, then why was it here? Every time something's out of place, you have to say, well, why was it in the place that we see it? So why is the Yitro story, if it happened after Har Sinai, put right where it is right now? And the answer the Rashbam tells us is that it's supposed to be contrasted with the story of Amalek at the end of last week's Parsha. Amalek, no respect for the Jewish people, attacks them right after Yetziat Mitzrayim, and they were out to get us, to hurt us, spiritually, physically. And yet then you see Yitro, someone who comes, acknowledges the greatness of our people, acknowledges the greatness of Hashem, comes try to help us, to connect with us, to support us. And there are two different types, and maybe somewhere in between, but two different types at least of goyim in the world, two different types of non-Jewish people that we interact with sometimes in our lives as a people. Sometimes we have the Amaleks, the people who are out to get us, that want our destruction spiritually, but also sometimes physically here in the world, in Israel. And yet there are the Yitros and the nations of Yitro, people who just care about us, want good in the world just like us. And here in Galut, we live outside of a Mizgeret, of a framework of just a Jewish world. We have an opportunity to learn from so many different people. And that indeed was something we got to do this week in Hello Torah, where we had someone from the African American community talk to us about who Dr. King was and help teach us some things about connection and concern for different types of people. And that's that's a Yitro moment where you look around and you say, well, there are people that we can learn from in our own lives. And yet, this week was also Tu B'Shvat. And Tu B'Shvat is an opportunity to realize the greatness of Eretz Yisrael. Yitro, at the end of his time in Sefer Bamidbar, says to Moshe, I want to go back to my land. And Moshe says, are you serious? We're about to get to Israel. Are you sure? Yitro says, I'm sure. I don't want to go on with you. The message of Tu B'Shvat is to realize that we as a Jewish people, while we live outside of Israel, we have this opportunity to learn from all the Yitros of the world. We then step forward and continue on to our own destiny in which we are alone in, which is to be in Eretz Yisrael, to be Am Yisrael with Hashem, ideally one day in Hashem's land. Shabbat Shalom.